Thanks a lot for having me. My goal today is just to sort of bring everybody into the loop on the big picture of this new Selander Center for Engineering Leadership. I've been talking to a lot of different audiences, and I know some of you have heard some things, and we're now trying to sort of get the word out around the college about what we're up to over the next now to 3 years or so, what the vision is. So, up until June of this year, we were the Engineering Leadership Program. We started at Cornell in 2012, and by we, I mean me. So the engineering leadership program started with just sort of me and an accomplice. And our goal was really to create something more systematic to develop our student leaders and also develop their teaming capacity. And because I'm me, develop them as human beings. So we started off quite small with a very modest impact. And then over 12 years, really started to grow a vision and much more engagement, a lot of collaborations across the college, culminating in support from Nancy and Bob Selander to create a center. So we're now at 6 staff and faculty. We have an open line as well, so we're growing even more. And the vision has grown quite a bit as well. So previously, if you knew us in our previous iterations, we were really focused on student engagement, student development. We did a lot of work with undergraduates. From day one, we've also worked with graduate students, but nothing as systematic as some of the programs that we ran for undergraduates. So one thing that has shifted with our new center designation and vision is that we've really expanded our areas of focus to have a greater impact across the entire college. One of my goals is to really have an impact on the culture of the college. And I'm in kind of a unique position, as many of you know. As a faculty member, I have my own interactions with all of you and with our colleagues, other faculty in the college, and I get to see kind of how that looks. Many of you also know what the student perspective is like of their interactions with staff and faculty in this college. We hear a lot of the things that are not going so well from the student perspective, I think, many of us. And then because I have an implant in the marketing and communications group, I'm married to a staff member, I intimately over the last 12 years have also gotten to see how those same people interact with staff versus faculty. And that's been very eye-opening. I know that you probably already know this. I'm not going to go into details. If you want to know who, hit me up later. But I will say there is definitely a double standard in how we interact with students, staff, and faculty in this college. And so it started to occur to me, if we're really going to ingrain in our students that they really do need to have certain professional skills, things like accountability, compassion, a curiosity, a willingness to receive feedback. If we really want to stand on that ground, we all have to be modeling that, right? And I think we have a ways to go until we have that embedded in the culture of our college. Not for lack of trying. I think there's a lot of little pockets where we've all been trying to achieve this. But to really have our student development efforts succeed, we also need to be seeing this vertically with staff and faculty in our interactions with each other and with the students. So my goal is to really embed some of these concepts in our culture over time. So that means that not only are we engaged in undergraduate and graduate student development through the Selander Center, we're also engaging faculty as part of our core mission. So we're developing some a faculty leadership academy, which will be sort of our first foray into this, and then more casual, less formal sort of means of interacting with staff and faculty to give you the same kind of perspective that we're trying to ingrain in our students. So these two really go hand in hand. I don't think you can really have one without the other. And then our third mission is to position ourselves as thought leaders and bar raisers. Some of the things I'm going to be sharing with you, in particular, our Leadership for All initiative, we're making this up because nobody else in the world is doing this. Nobody. So we're really putting ourselves out there as a model of what's possible and what should be happening in colleges of engineering. And that really, to me, brings a responsibility to put the word out about how we're doing it, to share tools so other places can have the same impact in their own environments, and to really hold people to a standard. Every university, I think every college of engineering, if you're going to look at our comparison schools, will say that they're developing leaders. Very few of them, if any, actually demonstrate that they are. And that is one thing that we're trying to model here, is that we measure our impact. We can really, at the end of this, turn around and say, here's exactly what we're accomplishing. So this is a lot of expansion. We're rolling this out, obviously, strategically in stages. And I really wanted you to have some information about the Leadership for All, our primary undergraduate development focus right now. I won't go so much into the faculty development piece, enough to say that there is, as I said, a Faculty Leadership Academy that will launch in January that's meant to start bringing faculty into this conversation as well. So, anybody hear the Core 4 yet? A few people, all right. Cool, well, you're the first to know. So one of the things that Nancy and Bob encouraged us to do was to think really big about what kind of impact we could have. Again, comparing to what we had been doing and what a lot of other colleges of engineering are doing, they have impact on a small group of students. And those students tend to come to programs through self-selection, right? I see myself as a leader, or I see this as something I like, and so I'm going to find you. And those are the people who wind up in whatever offerings there are. Or competition. We do that. We have a certification program that only has about 22 seats a year, and this year we had over 200 applicants for that. So there is some competition for this, but again, only a few people get to experience the certification program. Some of them, if I think about our comparison schools, it's more remediation, believe it or not. It's students who are really in trouble or failing in project teams or have gotten referred for poor teamwork. Those are the students who get access to development. And Nancy and Bob started thinking, well, look, if you're really serious about what you're teaching is critical to the practice of engineering, and I do believe it is, we're not, I don't think it's reasonable anymore to say, well, you can be an engineer with just your technical skills, and if you have these interpersonal collaboration leadership skills, good for you. But then when they go out in the world, they realize actually you can't get things done. Your technical skills are not your differentiator, and they're also not enough to actually practice engineering. All engineers need to know how to work with and through others to go build things or design things or program things. And we know this because we talk a lot to them. I'm seeing Krista Downey sitting in front row, nodding, as Director of Career Services, absolutely knows this is what employers look for because they know that's how engineers operate. And so you can't just sort of leave this stuff to chance or self-selection anymore. It really needs to be embedded in our technical curriculum. That's the ground I'm standing on. Well, you can't embed everything. So developing leaders is a lifelong process, and many of our students actually probably won't go on to have formal positions of leadership or even want to seek sort of managerial roles. Many of them will be perfectly happy finding their place as individual contributors. And so to try to say everybody needs a deep dive into leadership as an undergraduate, it's not accurate, it's also not realistic. So then we came down to, well, what do we need to make sure everybody gets? And this is the origin of the Core 4. So I've chosen 4 particular experiences, skills, perspectives, if you will, that I believe all of our engineering students should have before they graduate, just as a part of the regular undergraduate experience. You know, why 4? Come on, there's a lot of marketing folks here. It rhymes with core. It's a harder sell to have the Core 5. If it had to rhyme with 5, I probably could have added another. But as we're finding, these 4 elements actually fit very nicely together. They build on each other over the course of an undergraduate experience. I'm eventually looking at how do we embed this in the master's and PhD student experience, and frankly, the faculty experience, maybe staff onboarding as well. I think they're that fundamental. And we're starting with students. So here they are. These are 4 elements that over the next 4 years, we will be embedding in every student undergraduate experience in the college. And the first is already in motion. It's core values discovery. So understanding your core values is where it all starts. The second is listening skills. The third is followership, interestingly. And the fourth of the core four is receiving feedback. So let me unpack these for you a little bit so you understand the logic behind these. So core values and commitments. Why is this fundamental? Understanding your own core values, really what defined you as a person, is related to things like your sense of identity. So when students are understanding their core values from the beginning of their Cornell journey, one of the hypotheses we're testing is that they more quickly and thoroughly develop an engineering identity. They start to see themselves more quickly as belonging here, contributing here, and having a place and some responsibility in our community. And that all starts with explicitly understanding your core values. It's also deeply related to purpose. When you have some clarity on what drives you now, what has always driven you, you can start to be more intentional about exactly what kind of impact you want to have in the world. Our students sometimes get this now. Many of us didn't get this until we struggled through our 20s or 30s and realized, oh, something isn't quite right here. I'm not alive in my work. You go back and you start over and you have the core values conversation, that can add some clarity. We're aiming for students to have this conversation from day one so that they can start off asking themselves, what impact do I want to have? Certainly core values are related to your integrity, your sense of ethics, your responsibility to other people. Core values, the way we teach them, interesting, are also the basis of things like accountability, doing what you say you're going to do. Time management. So we're going to be teaching students how to make decisions about where to invest their time, what commitments they want to make. They are way oversubscribed. That is not news to anybody in this space, I'm going to imagine. They're way too busy. They're sleeping 4 hours a night, if that sometimes. They say yes to everything because everything sounds cool. And so what we're aiming to do is give them one point of decision making where you can say, look, if you have to say no to something, how are you going to decide what to say yes to and what to say no to? A really great lens is, what are my core values? And which of these opportunities actually expresses or feeds those values? Those are the ones I'm going to prioritize, right? I'm going to let the other stuff go if I don't have time for everything. We're relating this to things like professionalism, and we're collaborating with Tristan Getz in engineering ethics to draw the connection between who you are as a person, your core values, and what you put out in the world, the decisions you make that affect others. And that definitely relates to engineering ethics. So I won't go into depth on this any more than this, but I will say this is in motion. So this year, for the first time, we had 855 incoming freshmen take a summer online mini course on core values. They learned, what do we mean by core values? How do you know what your core values might be? They started asking themselves these questions. They then had a one-on-one coaching session with a professional certified coach to do a values discovery. So the values discovery happens in conversation, and it's you have to be trained, right? There's a lot of coaches in the room who are nodding. Rob Parker in our group, our coaching manager, hired over 70 contract coaches from around the world. We trained them up, we gave them the language, we integrated them into this program, and they've been having these really powerful one-on-one conversations with students from beginning of August, and some of them are finishing now. And it's really lighting them up. It's really cool to hear the conversations. We're now coming full circle back to the 1050s. So that's the freshman advising seminars that are ongoing now. We're visiting every single 1050 and closing the loop on the values conversation. So in those 1050s, the students are, for the first time, telling their values to another human being. Here's who I am. Here's what's most important to me in the world. This is what it looks like for me. And then we're helping them make the connection between knowing their own core values and taking regular action on those. Because that's really where the power of values is expressing that in the world. And so they're all making intentions and plans for actions that they're going to take to show people what their values are. We'll be picking up this conversation throughout the rest of their undergraduate years, making these other connections, but this is really the foundation of where it starts. I will say here that if anybody doesn't know what their core values are, please come and talk to me after this talk. We have a slew of really talented coaches over there, including Dan Taranto, who's sitting here in our group, part of our group, who are happy to have this wonderful, powerful conversation with you. It's a really fun conversation to have. So this is the horse has left the barn, the ship has left the port, things are in motion. It's gone amazingly well so far. I expected lots of glitches and hiccups. We've only had a few, and we'll continue to keep learning on that, and this will be part of the freshman experience from here on out. Our next of the core four is effective listening. So learning to listen well and have some intentionality around listening is absolutely fundamental to what students are here to do, to learn and to build connections. Good listening is the basis of empathy, of collaboration, and it accelerates their technical learning. It's also, they will discover, absolutely necessary for things like critical thinking and reasoning, influence and persuasion, more sort of leadership topics. So effective listening is fundamental. Many people think they do it well. Almost nobody does. And so we're actually going to be building on some listening skills that the students learn in the intergroup dialogue project and building on that through years 1 and 2 so that, again, they sort of have this shared understanding of what great listening is. Then we get into courageous followership. So this sometimes surprises people. Wait a minute, nobody signed up for a class on followership. Why are you teaching followership? We teach active, courageous followership. So if you talk to any student on the quad, pull them out and say, what's followership? Many of them will say, well, I'm a good follower if I do what I'm told to do. That's part of the equation, but it's not what great followership is. And so we want students to graduate with an understanding of what it actually means to be a team contributor and follower, even when you don't have a leadership title. The way we teach followership, it's 2 dimensions. One is actively supporting leadership, not just doing what you're told or going along with it, but being vocal with your support, contributing to your ideas to, yeah, I think this is the way we should be going. It ties into other things like accountability and professionalism, delivering on results. The other half, though, is actively challenging leadership. And that, for many of our students, is the harder part of this. Active challenge looks like, hey, I think we're in the wrong track here. I fundamentally disagree with what you're doing. I'm going to try and pull us back from the cliff, right? And actually taking full ownership for results on a team, even when you're not the leader, that's what good followership looks like. There's a lot of other skills built up in it, so as students start to explore who they are as followers, some of them are going to discover, oh, I need to take a class on having difficult conversations or being able to raise my voice. Others, their challenge is actually in the supportive part. They are perfectly fine sniping, right? We have colleagues like this. I know they're the ones who are critical reasoners. They're going to shoot down ideas and say why that didn't work. And they're not wrong, but they're missing the part where they actually contribute the positive voice and the support. So some of us need to learn that. When you have both of those parts, you can be a very effective follower in any circumstance. And of course, the dirty secret to this is active followership is just really leadership without a title. It's actually having influence and support in a group, even when you're not the designated leader. So that's another thing we'll be integrating into the undergraduate curriculum. And then last but not least is seeking and growing from feedback. You'll often see giving and receiving feedback clumped together. Those are actually 2 separate skills. Being able to give effective feedback is different from being able to hear it. And in my experience, I don't know if you're like me, hearing it's harder than giving it, right? And so developing both the sort of emotional regulation that you need to be able to hear critical feedback in particular, and the awareness of what good feedback is so that when you go seek it, you can shape it, right? If someone says, well, that wasn't very good, we want our students to be able to say, well, tell me how. What was the situation, the behavior, the impact that you didn't like so I can do something different next time? And that's just sort of some knowledge and experience. But without the capacity to be fearless in seeking feedback and knowing what to do with it, that's where we get stunted. And so this is just a skill and a muscle to be worked. And so all of our students will have a lot of experience by the time they graduate with hearing feedback and then deciding what they want to do with it. So that's our core 4. It's weird that I can't take questions. I'm just going to be honest because I'm used to very interactive, but it's not a big complex idea. Let me just lay out for you what this might look like eventually from the student perspective. So at scale, this is where we will be. First, I mentioned that we're measuring our impact on everything. Right now, we're doing that in kind of a short arc. So, for example, with the values coaching and the values piece, all of the students took a baseline measure of things like their identity as an engineer, their sense of belonging with the college. Even though they hadn't stepped foot on campus, they're developing a sense of belonging, with their interactions with people. We measured things like their awareness of their core values and how much they live their values every day and so on. That was kind of our baseline. At the end of this semester, they will be taking this same survey, but it'll be a time 2 survey. And that will allow us, just in the small arc of a semester, to see what changes took place. We can't, the scientist in me says, if you want to push on that, no, we don't have a control group. We can't definitively say it was because of what we did. But we are building out our capacity to actually do some research on this to show this is having an impact, right? At scale, everybody coming in will have sort of the baseline attitudes and behaviors that we're interested in before they even step on campus. So we'll have that as a baseline. And then year 1, they'll have the shared experience with the core values coaching and deciding what commitments they want to make as they chart out their path at Cornell with their core values in mind. So that's something that they all get at the same time. From there, the execution of this gets much more flexible. So the core values is a group experience. They're all doing it at the same time. I think there's big value in having those conversations. Listening skills, though, right away, that's a year 1 or 2 kind of skill. Freshmen and sophomore definitely need to hear this. But we're going to be flexible on where they get it. So we're being really creative about, we have some standalone clinics where you can learn this just as a standalone. But we're also integrating this content into the project team classes. So anybody who joins a project team, which is like 40% of our students, they're going to get it there. We're going to be empowering faculty to give a little refresher in any of their classes. So they'll be hearing this multiple times through multiple different venues throughout their time at Cornell. One of the things that I'll talk to you about at the end is, we're really needing to ramp up our on-demand modules for things like this. Students are very, very, very busy. That's our number 1 constraint. And the more we can be flexible about getting them fun, interesting, useful experiences when they want it, the better off we're going to be. So that might be how that emerges. More when they're starting to look at getting into teams. Now they're in project teams, or they're doing team-based classes, or they've kind of they've joined some student organizations sophomore year on up. That's when the followership piece comes relevant. And so some of the work that we're doing with followership will be more appropriate for upperclassmen. And I'm going to say more or less the same with receiving feedback. You can know about how to receive feedback in the abstract, but until you can go out the next day or that afternoon and actually practice it, it doesn't really stick. So for all of these, we have a just-in-time delivery model. Give it to them when it's really on their mind. Okay? So they'll be doing these various experiences. I'm not getting into details about how we're tracking and measuring this. It's too fine-grained, but this will be their student journey. All of these reinforce each other. So there will be constant callbacks. It's not you hear your core values in your first semester and never again shall we mention core values. Instead, those themes are going to be popping up throughout the entire experience. And then before they graduate, we will give them, right? Oh, what did I do here? Well, weird. Oh, again, this sort of post-test. So that over time, we can really say, are we having the impact we expected to have? This is both qualitative and quantitative data analysis. It also allows us to go back and say, you know what? We're not having it in some domain. We're going to go change something. We use this as constant input because we're an innovative, creative group. And so if something's not working, we don't get attached to it. We'll axe it, try something better. And so over time, this is what we're expecting. So that's our big picture just of the core 4. There's a lot I haven't talked about, and I'm not going to. This is really what's on our mind strategically right now, is engaging all of our students. One question is, well, why are we doing this? Besides going into the list of measurements that we expect to see different, there's a real human story behind all of this. I'm going to share a couple of video clips with you of a student who was in our certification program a couple of years ago. Her name is Angelica. She's an absolute rock star. The very first night that we have them, we do an off-campus retreat for our certification program. We put them in this experience that's very unsettling to many of them. We put them right in the spotlight, actually. And in this exercise, basically these brand new students who are just meeting each other stand in front of a room, and they essentially have 1 minute to tell everybody in that space why you should vote for me to have a space here. Why am I important enough for you to vote for me, my leadership, my life? We structure this in kind of a unfair way. It's called the lifeboat exercise. The whole setup really is you're on a lifeboat or you're on a big ship. It's about to sink. Only 3 of you will have space on the lifeboat, and you're going to have to vote for which 3. And so there's something at stake. You're up here trying to say, why is my life worth it, essentially? It's not a fun experience for them. One year they dubbed me most likely to drown people on a ship. It's at the end of the year. I will say right now, before I forget it, we come full around at the end, and it's very celebratory. Everybody gets a seat. But you know, the purpose of this is to really make these students think for the first time, what voice do you want to have for yourself? This is just true of life and leadership. If you're not willing or able to make a case for yourself, nobody else is going to do it. And it's a lesson they need to learn. So this is Angelica, very first night. Now, it's very quiet. This is turned up all the way. Angelica did not get a seat on the lifeboat. Do you see what's happening here, right? She has these amazing things. You can't hear them. She wants to be a doctor. She's very clear on her purpose. She can't express it. She didn't get a seat, and this is often what we're starting with. Fast forward 9 months later, after Angelica did a lot of deep work on her core values, she got very clear on her sense of purpose and why she's here. And she did a lot of other work with us over the course of the year in the certification program. This is the same human being.
Hi guys. So I think that most of what I want to express to you guys, and I guess this is a great opportunity to do it, is that from the bottom of my heart, I never had a group that like embraced me so fully as this group. And every week I look forward to like our classes, even though like so ungodly late. It's great. We don't need it. But like I really look forward to it. When it got canceled, I was so upset. But like I'm happy at the same time. So upset, mostly upset. Anyway, but anyway, yeah, this group of people have been like so great. And I feel like through these 2 semesters, I've overcome a lot, and even things I haven't overcome yet, I have ground to stand on now instead of maybe be floundering a little bit. So I just want to express that too. And then for my future, I just want to make a difference in the world and help people. I want to do it in the healthcare field. I think some people know that, but even if it's not, if it's policy, something else, I just want to make the world a better place for people to live in, have basic needs provided for. So
if you can do it for her, you can do it for anybody, I'm here to say. I mean, just the power of sort of understanding her own values and purpose. This is why I do this work, watching this blossom in front of us. Would she have found her way there through some other avenue? Maybe, I don't know. But why leave it to chance? That's why we're committed to offering these kinds of opportunities for all of our students. They all have this potential. And she's a rock star. Notice too, I just want to point out, we didn't shape her into some poised, executive presence speaker. We really work with everybody to bring out what's naturally best about them. She's kooky. She is so eccentric. She can't even help but show that, and it's delightful about her. And so part of our philosophy here is you take students where they are, you take humans where they are, and you grow what's best in them, right? And help them really stand in their own 2 feet, whatever that looks like for them.